Hi, I'm Bijal, yeah, as Steve mentioned, and I'm here to talk to you about reinventing the traditional consumer panel. And in this session, I'm going to ask you to kind of stretch what you would traditionally think of as market research and what traditional tools might look like, and to really think about partners and mobile tools and technologies that you could be using that are not considered traditional to help you fill the needs of what you would traditionally get from a consumer panel. And the reason why I want you to do this is I think there's a lot of current shortfalls with data and the access to data that you're currently getting. And I'll walk you through what I think those shortfalls are, the limitations they create for you as researchers, but also for brands and retailers and other folks inside of your organization who rely on data to make strategic decisions. And then what I think the best practices are for winning. I have the luxury of sitting inside of an organization that sits on a massive amount of data. We see over 75 million transactions at the item level come through our door on a yearly basis. And our business is not a data business. We are a promotions company that offers cash back on everyday purchases to our consumers. And as a byproduct of creating a very, very sophisticated customer loyalty model, we have developed a way to get all of this transaction information, which allows us to do really, really cool things for brands and retailers. And so part of why I'm up here is to give you an example of the things Ibotta can do, not being a traditional data provider. And then you should kind of stretch your imagination and think about other partners that have walked into your door, into your facilities, and have come to you with, we have this type of data, or we're tracking these types of things on consumers, and see how that might actually plug into to the work that you're doing. So current data shortfalls. Severe lack of scale. So we have to rely on panels because we can't get enough data on the traditional consumer panels, right? So we use these panels. They have somewhere between 100,000 and 350,000 households on them, but they don't actually tell you the full picture of what's happening across the United States. I think before the time of information being at our fingertips, everyone kind of assimilated and made decisions together. And we're now in an era of everyone has their own identity and their own shopper journey and their own way of actually gathering information and making purchasing decisions. And so while 100,000 or 350,000 people might be a great way to get a little bit of visibility into what's happening into the broader market, it is very, very hard to then activate against such limited amounts of data. So then, to try to combat that, we try and get multiple data sources. But what's the problem with that? You can't actually link across multiple data sources. There's no common identifier to tell you that Bijal, who is over here making these purchasing decisions at Walmart, is also the same Bijal who's over here making these purchasing decisions at Express. There's no way to really know that unless you use a traditional consumer panel. But the issue with that, as I just mentioned, is there's a severe lack of scale. So then we rely on data scientists. I'm a data scientist myself, so don't take any offense if you're in the room. But we have to do a lot of modeling. We create predictive methodologies. We use algorithms. We try and use similarities across certain consumers to try and assert what the general population is doing. Again, as society becomes more individualistic and people make their own decisions based on the information they have access to, this becomes increasingly complicated. There's significant delays in data refresh. I think the geometry woman mentioned this a little bit earlier in that you have to wait 30 days to get any purchasing information on consumers. And there are significant delays. And if you want to get a read on a new product, you're having to wait 6, 8, maybe 6 months before you get the right information in order to make a decision on whether this new product is a good idea or a bad idea. You rely on the same data as your competitors. Because we're so focused on ensuring that we are getting data from the traditional players in the space, everyone's getting that same data. You're not actually differentiating yourself with the data you're getting. You might be differentiated if you have a data science team that's in-house, or you have researchers that are sophisticated in terms of being able to create lookalike models and use algorithms to predict what might happen next, but you're relying on the same core underlying data. In addition, you lack deep visibility into millennials. They're some of the hardest consumers to access. They don't use traditional methods. They won't necessarily sign up for some kind of panel solution and provide you with all of their intel. That's just not how they operate. So what does this do? It creates a lot of limitations. On the consumer insight side of the business, you have the inability to understand cross-retail purchases. This is the Walmart to Express example that I just gave. You have the inability to directly activate against consumer segments. So you can take a small audience and understand what's happening, but actually in order to activate against those consumers, you have to use lookalike models to extend your audience and then go and find consumers who might look like Bijal. You have an inability to target SKU-level buyers in an affordable and turnkey fashion. You can't find your competitive buyers and tell them your story and try to get them to switch. It's extremely expensive. And you have the inability to get quick enough data and accurate reads, as I just mentioned, for new item launches. On the media targeting side, there's also limitations. You have to rely on lookalike modeling versus actual purchase behavior. You have to buy segments off the shelf rather than building in-house segments, again, because they're expensive. And your target audience ends up being exactly the same as your competitors. You want to go after the same people your competitors want to go after. What does that do? It actually drives up the CPM for the advertising that you're trying to purchase. On the media attribution side, you can't actually do closed-loop attribution, right? With 100,000 or 200,000 or 350,000 people, it's really, really hard on specific SKUs to understand, hey, you were exposed to this ad. Did you actually ultimately go and purchase this product? You also have the inability to rapidly test and learn because of the data delays, and therefore you can't understand which media is leading to the highest purchase through rate, and therefore it's hard to execute the best media strategy. So I just told you all of these limitations. You're like, that's great. What can you do about it? There's a couple of things you can do. So I've been out talking to a lot of brands and retailers and just trying to understand what's happening in the industry and where there's shortcomings and what people are trying to do to combat that. And there are some brands and retailers who tend to shift to the side of being very avant-garde in what they do. They will take risks. They will rely on data that isn't necessarily considered the gold standard, and they'll see what they can make of it. And so being in a position where we're not a data company, I have the luxury of going around and figuring out what are people doing and what kind of data would be valuable to them. And the first thing I'll tell you is people are moving to growing their own internal customer database. And yesterday, Steve asked me the question of, well, is this inefficient? And yeah, it can be inefficient if you don't have the right people inside your organization, or if you're not willing to make the investment to do other things with that data. But you already probably have a CRM, and what I'm asking you to do is either grow two things, grow that CRM, and in addition to that, supplement it, and I'll get to that in a second. The second is you should probably partner with a DMP. This is a data management platform to make your data actionable. I don't work for any of these companies, and they all do the same thing, but in different veins. But there are a lot of players out there who will help manage your data, and the key to them doing this also is that they can help you actually activate against it. They're collecting a lot of information on the same consumers you're collecting information on, and they can go and find those people on their mobile phones. They can find them on their desktops. They can find them on their TV consoles and pitch the right media to them at the right time. And then the last thing I'll tell you is you should find unique data sources to enhance your data assets. I'll walk you through what Ibotta does and what unique data asset we sit on, but there's tons of mobile players out there in the space who you traditionally wouldn't look at as being data providers, and they could be really, really helpful in getting you access to information that could differentiate you from your competitors. So for those of you who don't know what Ibotta does, I'll just give you a quick overview. We're a mobile rebate shopping app. You essentially log into the app, you choose a category that you want to shop at, you pick a particular retailer, and then you scroll for products that you might want to buy. You then pick an offer, in this case, Honey Nut Cheerios. You click on the offer. In our app, we require you to engage with some type of content. It could be a survey that you take really quickly, a poll question. It could be watching a video. It could be deciding whether you'd want to try it one flavor versus another flavor, all pre-shopper intel that we're gathering. And essentially, in this case, you watch a video, and then you unlock the rebate. You then have to go to the store and actually buy the product. You upload a photo of your receipt, or you scan your loyalty card as you're checking out, and then you cash out after you've hit a certain cash out threshold. Through this process, what's really important is the left side of the screen. We capture data through optical character recognition. You heard a company earlier that also does this. But essentially, we scan the entire receipt, and we capture all of the data off the receipt and store it in our repository. In addition, you can connect your loyalty card. When you connect your loyalty card in our app, anytime you go to the store and scan your loyalty card on a nightly basis, that T-log feed is fed over to us. This allows us to be able to understand, did you buy the exact SKU that was needed in order to redeem the rebate? But we sit on this vast set of data just as a byproduct of providing promotions to consumers. So no one would ever think, oh, they're sitting on this data set. And so it allows us to do really, really cool things with that data. We get visibility into full basket item level purchase data at the individual level, not at the household level, but at the individual user level. And as you all know, probably what you or your spouse would buy is pretty different. In addition, we access and track 75 million transactions per year. We are able to then tie this information, because we're a mobile app, to demographic details, because you have to register for the app and provide your demographic details, and geolocation data. So we know what stores you're walking into and what stores you're walking out of, how long you spent in those stores. If you have beacon-related technology inside those stores and you want to understand whether someone walked by a particular beacon, we would be able to track that information for you because of the way mobile devices are set up. We have outlets and channels that other providers don't have, meaning we're capturing tons of receipts for places like Walmart and Target, who generally tend to be pretty guarded with their data. The reason why this is really important is our data and partnering with someone like us. Again, it doesn't have to be us. There's a ton of players out there who are doing really innovative things, and depending on what your needs are, they can help supplement your data sources. But in our case, it allows you to do a lot of really cool things. One, you can optimize your media spend across retailers. So I know that in Walmart, you might not be buying this particular product, but you're going to Kroger and you're buying this particular product. It allows you to enhance decision-making accurately versus relying on data that's not tied out across retailer. You can rapidly understand and update your pricing and improve your competitive positioning by understanding what your competitors are pricing at different retailers. Why? Because on the receipt, we have access to the price that a consumer paid for a particular product, and we're tracking that for all of the products. And you can unlock additional consumer insights. You could trigger surveys based on purchasing decisions. There's a lot of really cool things that you could do in near real time with the data that we're collecting. So just to recap, I think in terms of winning strategies, I'd grow your existing customer base in terms of growing your internal CRM or the data that is hosted on your DMP. If you're not partnering with the DMP, you can talk to an agency. There are probably folks inside of your company who know how to partner with data management platforms, but that's definitely where the industry is moving. And then I would scour and find unique data sources, because the amount of intel and additional data they can provide you at the customer level is sometimes even better than what traditional players provide. That's all I got.
Thanks, Bijal.
Yep.
Any questions? Let me ask you something. Are you capturing things like Amazon?
Yeah, so in our case, we're specifically focused on in-store purchasing. So 98% of all purchases still happen in brick and mortar stores. And so we don't actually capture data that's happening at Amazon. We have a little bit of Amazon data. So if a rebate is running, we understand that people actually went online and purchased a specific product. But we specifically focus on the offline channel. If you're a product that is in the online space, I'm sure there are providers out there, again, as a byproduct of something else they're doing, that would be able to supplement your data source.
Okay. Anybody else?
Thanks for the presentation. Do you find you're keeping people engaged over the long term, or is there drop off that people aren't kind of going through the trouble? And the other question is, do you have just a kind of a representative sample, or is it just these kind of coupon, coupon hunters, for example,
Yeah.
that are kind of predominantly in your database?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So in our case, we actually don't hit the traditional couponer. Our population actually skews very heavily towards millennials, so 25 to 34-year-olds, males and females. And so we aren't actually hitting the traditional couponer. We're hitting tech-savvy folks who are trying to get money back, which happens to be every millennial. There was a recent stat on millennials and their top priorities, and one of them is saving money. And so we don't necessarily skew in that way. We do skew towards millennials, though. And so what this means for us is that, we're not trying to create the representative United States, but we have 17 million downloads of our app, and we're capturing data on these users, and therefore, if you want a panel that looks like the United States, we can create a panel that looks like the United States and normalize the data in that way. We have a lot of flexibility because we're not limited to such a small amount of users that we're capturing data for. In terms of loyalty or long-term engagement, we provide cash back to our consumers. There's no points, there's no reward, it's cash back. And surprisingly, people love getting cash back. They actually find it very easy to translate and put into their app. So we do get drop-off just like normal apps would get drop-off, but it's not significant drop-off. The customers who come in and are earning and are uploading their receipts, they're earning a pretty significant amount of money as time goes on, and so they tend to stay engaged inside of the app. Yeah.
Good. Anybody else? Well, then first, thank you, Bijal.
Yeah.